Final Fantasy Tactics is a game renowned for its complicated gameplay, incredible customization, but most importantly, its story. A convoluted tale about station, religion, faith, betrayal, and most principally, the significance of blood versus character. Ramza Beoulve and Delita Heiral, two men whose intertwined fates and shared trauma led them down two very different paths on their way to save all of Ivalice. When the game begins, we're immediately told that history is wrong, that the truth, after many centuries, has been rediscovered, and the man known as the hero of Ivalice, a commoner become king, was in fact the true hero. But is that really the case? Delita Heiral, a commoner's son, who by chance fortune was adopted into the prestigious Beoulve household, and he became a brother to history's excommunicated hero, Ramza Beoulve. Ivalice Durrai tells us from the beginning that this is in fact our true hero. This is the man responsible for the peace brought to Ivalice. And he's not wrong. Not really. Ivalice seems to almost downplay Delita's role, possibly because it is the most well known. While Delita played Game of Thrones with the succession, Ramza was facing down literal demons born from the Church of Galapagos. Imagine that. Shocker. Ramza believes in the purpose and integrity of individual actions, while Delita believes in the greater good, in his own way, and necessitates that he must achieve it by any means necessary. And isn't that exactly what war is? The sacrifice of soldiers on the field so others can sleep peacefully in their beds? History gives us numbers, a few scattered names, some notable heroics and deeds, but to most people these sacrifices are still just numbers. We, the player, the listener, the student, are being told that history is wrong and we should not believe it. But the same can be said of Ivalice himself. We trust this man because he tells us to, because it's already contrarian to the typical hero's tale. The war ended and our hero was still deemed a heretic? We're not even told why Ramza is the hero. Not initially. Just that he is. Delita's story is one familiar to us, that of the traditional hero trope, a youth that went from kneeling in the dirt to rising to become king. Yet, at what expense? This is the true nature of the Zodiac Brave story. We the player are left questioning, as Ramza so often is. When we meet Ramza and Delita, they are friends, brothers in every way but blood. Hell, Delita is practically a noble himself, enjoying the comforts and safety of a castle, given proper care and education. The only thing really missing is, well, as Argath says it himself. There's a reticence about Delita if you watch his interactions closely. He rarely speaks to anyone but Ramza, and only after the more important people have spoken. Delita isn't fooled, he knows his place. He's a common man of common blood. And Ramza, the youngest son of the prestigious Beoulve house, although of less importance, given the muddling of his blood, appears oblivious to Delita's isolationism. Ramza begins as a naive boy who hasn't had to know personal struggle. There's a stark contrast between these two men and how they view their positions. Ramza was born into nobility. Delita was granted it. And this is also what makes Argath an interesting foil to them both. Horrible, but interesting. He is a man treading the border of both worlds. Argath makes both men very uncomfortable for very different reasons. Ramza is ignorant to the presence of class in the same way that many are ignorant to racism in our own world. Yet Delita is very much well aware. And that awareness that eventually leads Delita to upend the status quo in Ivalice, in an attempt to ensure that there are no more teachers to show that common blood does not in fact make you a common man. Ramza is an interesting foil to Delita. Renouncing his heritage following the brutal death of Delita's sister Titra, Ramza seeks a quiet and simple life. He wants nothing to do with war, with politics, with classism. Yet he finds himself a mercenary, hired to protect the very heir of Ivalice. Ivalice Chronicles is at the heart of the conflict of Ivalice, and the conflict between Ramza and Delita. Delita seeks to use the princess apparent as a tool to unite the country behind, or so he says, while Ramza seeks merely to protect her. And this is where the two sides of the story really begin to diverge. And you can see it here, beautifully portrayed in this FMV. The two men stand on either side of a bridge. They are bound still by their history, their ideals, their desires. A chasm looms close, pressing in from either side, ready to swallow them both. Yet that thread of a connection remains. Ramza sees Ivalice as a person, as a woman, not a tool or a bargaining chip. It's not even certain that she is truly the princess. And it's quite possibly this revelation that she is actually a commoner that leads to Delita deciding to protect her as he couldn't his sister. It's typically our hero that gets the princess, isn't it? Yet it's Delita that embodies the typical trope of a fantasy hero. A peasant boy with an introspection unseen in others, who grows into a position of respect and influence, who the princess falls in love with and marries, and they live in love and prosperity for all their days. Ahem. As Delita manipulates the northern and southern skies against each other, he sees the church as nothing more than an additional tool to fulfill his desires. While Delita is aware of the Germanic scriptures, it never appears that Delita discovers the truth behind the church's machinations. And even if he'd heard the rumors of demons and necromancy and true actions of the Knight Templar, what of it? These tales, and so far as he sees it, myths, spread fear, chaos, uncertainty, and uncertainty creates openings for Delita to fill. In fact, he frequently frames and betrays allies all the time, and it's actually thanks to Ramza's actions that Delita becomes king at all. While Delita probably knew nothing of demons, Ramza in turn was likely ignorant of most of the political machinations coordinated by the Lucavi. His concern was the Knights Templar, not who sat the throne. In fact, Ramza seems to practically forget about Ivalice once she falls into Delita's care. It's implied that Ramza himself is descended from Germanique, who was friend and betrayer to Saint Jorah, the very figure that the Church of Glabados is founded around. The hero of the Zodiac Brave story, centuries before. The prophet that led the people, that gathered its warriors, that struck down the demons, and then was killed for it. We are told that Saint Jorah was the hero of Ivalice, the savior, and either the host for Ultima, or Ultima herself. And interestingly, it's Alma that becomes Ultima's host. Alma, who most importantly, shares her mother's blood with Ramza. Surely not a coincidence. It seems that it was always Ramza's fate to be a hero, to become the heretic, the betrayer, the man cast from society. When accountability and responsibility became too much, he ran. From politics, from family, from honor. But destiny entwined him with Ivalice, with Delita, and it was Ramza's moral compass that would not allow him to any longer ignore the evil dwelling in the hearts of Ivalice. And when the horn of heroism was blown, Ramza answered the call. Delita, on the other hand, we see Delita struggle from his earthly roots. His whole life he had to know when best to stay silent and when best to speak. And he uses this to great effect to create allies, to woo Ivalice to thwart the church. to become a man who could not be moved, and in turn would move others. Ultimately, Ramza and Delita share the same aspiration, to see an Ivalice freed from greed and corruption. Yeah, good luck with that. Our protagonist, the underdog bracing himself against the woes of the world. A man, a boy really, caught up in a whirlwind of betrayal and conflict. Whereas Ramza seeks peace and resolution, Delita seeks destruction and upheaval. Both are a means to the same end. It's interesting that Delita ultimately furthers the church's schemes by increasing unrest around the lineage to the Lion Throne. He never intended for Ivalice to remain in the church's clutches, although what Delita's overall plan initially was is unclear. Frankly, I think he's full of crock and was winging it. Ramza is the preservation to Delita's ruin. Two opposing but equal forces that cannot exist nor succeed without the other. Delita was responsible for the princess's care, for striking down the influential people who would have stopped Ramza, and Ramza in turn struck down the Lucavi, who would have rained ruin down on Ivalice. One force would have failed without the other. Nothing can live without something else dying. Nothing can die without having lived first. That is the balance. And in the end, as is so often the case in history, it is the path of ruin that is most remembered. Delita obtained his dreams. He became powerful, knowledgeable, influential, and eventually king. He got the princess, the throne, the recognition, brought prosperity and peace. He obtained the power to prevent more Tetras. And Ramza? What did Ramza get? He got freedom, the choice at last to be his own person, go his own way. And most importantly, he accomplished what Delita never could: save his sister.